The NFL Top 100 list. A list that comes out every single year, and it's kind of a pride thing for a lot of NFL athletes. It doesn't mean everything, but it means, it's a pretty cool accomplishment to be on the NFL Top 100, to be on NFL Network, doing kind of your story in the NFL Top 100 video. But every single year, it feels like recently, the Seattle Seahawks are getting some disrespect. Last year, we were obviously a team that people thought was going to suck, so we ended up only with one player on the list. This year, we only have a couple guys, and a lot of guys that were basically left out, which were really close to making it as well. And we have a couple in there, but it's not only the people that I thought would be. So there's a lot of questions going on there. It was a while since we've had a list of where we were, really, really acknowledged as some of the best people in football. It was back in 2014 when the Seahawks had 5 guys on the NFL Top 100. It started off with number 7, Richard Sherman, number 14, Marshawn Lynch. At 17, there was Earl Thomas. At 20, there was Russell Wilson. And at 65, they had Cam Chancellor. But we essentially had 4 guys in the top 20 and 1 guy also in the top 70. And of course, that's coming off a Super Bowl year and a team that everyone loved. But then you look at years like last year. Last year, the Seahawks, were expected to be a team that was tanking, and no one believed in them outside of maybe the Seahawks themselves. And you had a guy like Quandre Diggs, who is a great football player, a great safety, and deserved to be on the top 100 list, fell at number 72 last year. He was right there with Budda Baker, who was at 67. Tyrann Mathieu at 70. So a couple safeties around him there, and he was at 72. And, it was nice to see at least one Seahawks player, getting some love. But it left some questions at that point. For me, I was a guy that was looking for somebody like Tyler Lockett or a guy like DK Metcalf DK Metcalf to be on that list, but they weren't. And maybe that was because they assumed, without Russell Wilson coming in, they don't get the recognition they deserve. But we only had one guy on the list, but that was fine. The Seahawks, he was, outside of maybe him and Jamal Adams, who the reason he's probably not on the top 100 list is because they knew he gets hurt every single year, and we haven't seen him play a full season in a while. That's why Diggs got it. And Jamal Adams and him were probably the 2 guys on the team outside of the other 2 I mentioned, Lockett and Metcalf, who I thought were the best players on the Seahawks team. We didn't have Kenneth Walker last year going into the season, or Tariq Woolen, or any of these other guys. It was, Geno Smith or Drew Lock. You had the receivers we had and the safeties, and there was a lot of question marks everywhere else and how this team was going to compete. But then you get to this year, and I thought, of course, we're going to have a lot of guys on the list. And in the first, couple minutes of seeing the total list, I was sitting there going, man, there feels like something's missing. There wasn't a Seahawks player for a while, it felt like. And there was only 3 of them on the list. One of them being Bobby Wagner. Now, let's look back really quickly. Bobby Wagner last year on the Rams was 29th. So, if we didn't let go of Bobby Wagner for 1 year randomly, he probably would have been on the list last year as well for the Seahawks. But he was 29th last year. This year at 62. The first Seahawks on the player on this entire list sits at 62, and that's Bobby Wagner. One of the most veteran players on the team, a guy that wasn't even on the team last year and had to come back this year, after whatever you want to call it, after a breakup that they had, after a tough moment together in time that they had. But there's Bobby Wagner. At 62 was the first player on the list for the Seahawks. And I was thinking, okay, now we're already at 62. It's going to be tough to fit in some of these other guys. And it was. You had at 76, we had 62. 76, Tariq Woolen. It's his second year in the league. Much respect to Tariq Woolen for making this list, and he deserves it. One spot after him at 77 was Geno Smith, and that was it for the Seahawks. 3 guys. Not even Quandre Diggs, who was on the list last year in the 70s, didn't make it. You had Bobby Wagner in the 60s at 62, Tariq Woolen at 76, and Geno Smith at 77. And it, leaves a lot of guys on the list that I'm wondering, how are they not there? Now, if you're like me, you're probably wondering where a few specific guys are. Quandre Diggs is one of them because, he was on the list last year, and it wasn't like he had some extreme regression to go from in the 70s to out of the 100. You're probably thinking where DK Metcalf is, considering that there's a lot of wide receivers on this list. Let's just break down really quick how many wide receivers there were. Number 4 was Cooper Kupp. That's really high. Number 7, Devontae Adams. Number 15, Tyreek Hill. Number 17, Justin Jefferson. Number 19, Deebo Samuel. Number 24, Jamar Chase. Number 26, Stephon Diggs. 35, Keenan Allen. 37, DeAndre Hopkins. 53, Mike Evans. 63, Jalen Waddle. And then you go down all the way to 90, which it's Odell Beckham Jr. And this is no disrespect to Odell, but I don't really understand how he's on the top 100 list when he tends to get hurt every other year, doesn't play some years, above a guy like DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett. All the other names before that, if you tell me they're a little bit better than DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett, totally understand. But not Odell Beckham at 90. And 95, CeeDee Lamb. Now, like I was saying, you're probably wondering where these guys are. Well, there was 3 guys right outside the top 100 that were on the Seahawks. And that was at 101, just missed it by 1 spot, was DK Metcalf. Well, I was thinking they're crazy. He's not in the top 100 guy. And like I said, I think it's crazy he's not ahead of Odell. But he's right there at 101, so I'm not so crazy to think that he should be close, at least. He ended right at 101. And at 102, I was actually very surprised about this one. I'm not saying I don't think he's good. He gets a lot of tackles per year. I just didn't expect Jordan Brooks, linebacker for the Seahawks, at 102 right after DK Metcalf. That's nice to see some respect on his name. He's ahead of Alvin Kamara, Jimmy Ward, TJ Hawkinson, Kevin Byard, Cordell Patterson, a couple other guys. That's a pretty high respect. I know 101 or 102 where he's at sounds like a huge number, but if you're considering how many players are in the NFL, which I'll give you that exact number, this is a very random side note, but the NFL consists of 32 teams. Any team has anywhere between 65 and 70 players. Depending on injury list, whatever. So on game days, there is 1,696 active players in the NFL, 1,500 which are on the active roster, 300 some on the practice squads. But out of 1,500 players in the entire NFL, being at 102 is actually quite the honor. It's like, you look at all-star games in basketball, it's 20-something guys. There's only 10, 15 guys on a team that are active. It's actually quite a respectful acknowledgement to be in the top 20 or 25 or 30 or 40 even in the NBA. Same with NFL. That's why they do a top 100. They're not doing a top 100 to say you're the 90th best player. It's a bad thing. It's a good thing. In other sports, it might not, like NBA being the 90th best player, might not be as highly regarded of a compliment. But Jordan Brooks at 102 is much more than I ever expected, but he's right there. And then the last one I saw that just missed the cut was 110, was Quandre Diggs. So he dropped from the, was it 76 or 67 down to 110. I'm not quite sure why he made it all the way out. I could understand a little bit of a regression, so to say, if he was, to drop from the number he was at to in the 90s. But to drop all the way out of the 100, I'm a little surprised. But all in all, it looks like these are the guys that are considered with the highest regard in terms of the NFL top 100. And those guys are Tariq Woolen, Geno Smith, Bobby Wagner, DK Metcalf, Jordan Brooks, and Quandre Diggs. So according to the NFL top 100, those are our top 6 players. The one big question mark, and I'm going to do a video about these statistics soon because I think Tyler Lockett's the most underrated player ever we've seen in the last 4 or 5 years. He's had 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons, 5 straight 8+ touchdown seasons. I am very surprised. With or without Russell Wilson, he's proved that he is a top 10, 15 quarterback in the NFL, and he's treated as if he's just some third option receiver every single year, even though he's been one of the best players in the NFL for a solid 4 or 5 year stretch. So I can't believe Tyler Lockett once again has not been acknowledged anywhere on this list and in this situation. Overall, I find it wild a team like the Seahawks only have 3 guys, Woolen, Smith, and Wagner. But I also appreciate the acknowledgement for Jordan Brooks at 102 and Quandre Diggs at 110. DK Metcalf and Quandre Diggs, I think, should have been in that top 100, and I think Tyler Lockett should at least have been in the 100 or somewhere hovering right outside, but I only have up to 110, and he's not there. It blows my mind what happens with Seahawks players and the disrespect they get in this league, but overall, it doesn't matter because when we win a Super Bowl in the next 2 or 3 years, I don't think anyone's going to care about the disrespect anymore. They're going to be happy that we were underdogs and won the whole damn thing.